My challenge for me, as I preach to us, is simply to never give up. As hard as things have been, as hard as things are, the author of Hebrews is telling them and is speaking to us, and he's saying, never give up. In chapter 10, for example, he says in verse 35, therefore do not throw away your confidence, which has great reward, for you have need of endurance, so that when you have done the will of God, you may receive what is promised. Verse 39, and we are not of those who shrink back to destruction, but of those who have faith to the persevering of the soul. What he is simply saying is, don't give up. As hard as it is, as challenging as it has been for me, for you, and I speak to us, the word of the Lord for today in the reset that he is doing is don't give up. Now that's easy to say, and I'm sure most would agree with having heard it, but a lot of things are easier to say than to do, especially when you're overwhelmed by life's negative realities. So he's going to say three things to help you and me and us, in spite of all the turmoil we're in personally, ecclesiologically, culturally, racially, politically, socially, economically. Never give up. The first thing he wants to say is to encourage you never to give up. Therefore, since we have so great a cloud of witnesses surrounding us. Therefore, since we have so great a cloud of witnesses surrounding us. Now, whenever you see the word therefore in the Bible, you must ask what it's there for. A witness gives agreement or testimony to something. A witness in a courtroom gives testimony to the reality of what is being said. He calls them a cloud of testimony givers or witnesses. He says these witnesses are surrounding us. Present tense. They're right here, right now, and they will testify. The author of Hebrews says there is a cloud of witnesses, there is a body of people who will testify that you can make it and that you ought never give up. That testimony is given by men and women who are described in chapter 11. Now, faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen, for by it the men of old gained approval. By faith we understand that the worlds were prepared by the word of God, so that what is seen was not made out of things which are visible. The cloud of witnesses that he goes on to describe, he will say the words by faith, then he'll give the name of the witness, and then he'll tell you what the witness did. He will say by faith, this witness, Abraham, Abel, Noah, Enoch, Sarah, Rahab, on, and then he'll tell you what they did by faith. So the testimonies that he gives in 11, leading him to talk to us beginning in chapter 12, is a testimony that the key to making it and not giving up is learning to live by faith. So that's the key. He says faith is the conviction or persuasion of what you don't have empirical evidence to validate. In other words, faith has to deal with unseen reality. Faith is different than sight. Sight is something you have empirical reality. You can look at it with your own two eyes. He says, faith is the assurance of things hoped for. It involves an expectation, hope. It is being confident about the expectation, and the way you know you're confident about the expectation is that you move in faith even though you haven't seen it yet. So you don't see it, but it's real, and you have to move by faith in light of what you do not see. He says, let me illustrate what I'm talking about. He says, we know that the worlds were created by the word of God. But I don't know that anybody has seen God. So what you see, the world, came from somebody you don't see. In other words, we know God is real not because we've seen God, but we've seen what he can do. If you and I are going to not quit, give up, throw in the towel, we must learn to live by faith. And faith is not merely the event when you got saved. It is supposed to be the lifestyle that you live now that you are saved. He says in Romans 14:23, whatever is not of faith is sin. So to not live by faith is to live sinfully. He says in 2 Corinthians 5:7 that we walk by faith, not by sight. Since we have a cloud of witnesses, witnesses testify. You can start where you are and say, the rest of my life, I'm going to live by faith. I'm going to act like God is telling the truth, even though I don't see the result yet. Says, and he talks about creation. He says, we live in a world created by somebody you don't see. But you don't say God doesn't exist because I don't see him. So his challenge is a faith challenge. All of the people he names are from the Old Testament. So this is one of the reasons you read the Old Testament. It's full of stories, but it's full of narratives designed to challenge you to live by faith in the New Testament. Since we are surrounded by all these Old Testament saints, he says, you keep going. Now, one other thing about this first point that I've been on too long, and that is that these Old Testament saints, it concludes by saying at the end of chapter 11, verse 39, having gained approval through their faith. 11:39 says they gained approval. To be approved, you must finish by faith. So these approved people in chapter 11 are the ones, not Christians in general, but these approved people are the witnesses that God uses to keep us going by faith. So, the first thing are the witnesses. The second thing is you. Laying aside every encumbrance and sin which so easily entangles us. He says, I want you to remove encumbrances, he says, plural, and he says, I want you to remove the sin, singular. An encumbrance is something that is extra baggage, something holding you down. An encumbrance is simply baggage that's keeping you from moving forward by faith. It's slowing you down. It's hindering you. It's limiting your spiritual progress. And so it is an encumbrance. So what is some encumbrance? People can be encumbrances. See, you got the wrong folk in your life. They can hold you back with human thought, with secular thinking, with faithless points of view. So people can be encumbrances. The past can be encumbrances. Playthings can be encumbrances. What he says is, something that holds you back, slows you down from moving by faith. And remember, we're talking about your movement now. In other words, every other sin you commit is because you don't believe God. So because we don't believe God, we commit a sin. Unbelief is the entangling sin. If you solve the problem of faith, you've greatly impacted the problem of sin because you haven't gotten it tangled in unbelief. And remember, by belief, we're not talking about first your emotions. We're talking about your footsteps, the decisions that you make. To say, I'm going to trust God with this situation, even though I don't see the outcome yet.